Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. First, I want to thank you for sharing your opinion on the channel about what you'd like to learn to crochet. So based on your answers, today we're gonna learn how to crochet a stylish round bag that closes with a zipper. So in this tutorial, I will tell you how to crochet a circle using such a wonderful spiral pattern that is the base of the bag, how to crochet two parts of the bag together, how to sew a zipper into the bag, and how to sew holders for the strap. First, let's find out what materials and tools you will need to create your own bag. For crocheting this bag, I will use two skeins of the 7-9mm T-shirt yarn, around 100 meters each, a 6mm hook, a needle with a big eye, two stitch markers, a zipper around 25 centimeters, a long strap, in my case it's a leather strap with a chain and carabiners, such two strap holders that we will sew to the bag, floss threads the same color as the yarn and the zipper, a needle for sewing, and scissors. First step is to crochet two parts of the bag which are completely identical. Each part is a circle with small walls. So let's start crocheting the first circle and then you'll make the second one the same way by yourself. For every part of the bag I take a new skein of the yarn so I could be sure that it will be enough for me. And to start crocheting the circle, first we make a magic ring. If you don't know how to make it, just repeat after me. Make sure that you have the tip of the yarn on the right. And the magic ring is ready. This stitch we count as the first stitch. And now we need to make 5 more single crochet into this ring. To make a single crochet, we insert the hook into the ring, hook the working yarn, and take a loop. Now we have 2 loops on the hook. Hook the working yarn and push it through both loops on the hook. So we made the second stitch. And now 4 more stitches. The same way. 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now pull the tip of the yarn until you get a circle. Don't pull it too hard, leave it a little hole in the middle of the circle because we still need it to crochet the second row, to crochet our pattern. And now we need to join the circle here. For that we make a loop on the hook a little bigger. Then we need to insert the hook under the first stitch of the circle. Every stitch looks like V. So we insert the hook from the back side under this stitch, like this. Then we hook the loop and bring it to the back side. and make chain 1. For that, just hook the working yarn and push it through the loop. We have finished the first row of the circle. From the second row, we start crocheting our pattern. In general, no matter what the pattern you use to crochet your circle, but the rules are always the same, the rules of crocheting a perfect circle. So according to the rules, in the second row, we will make increases into each stitch from the first row. An increase means that we will make 2 stitches into every stitch from the previous row. So under every stitch we will make 2 stitches in the second row. And now I will show you how we will make our stitches to get the pattern that we need. First, we insert the hook under the same stitch where we just joined the first row. So this was our loop, this one, and we made it under this stitch. So now we insert the hook under the same stitch. Now hook the working yarn and take a loop. This loop that you take must be the same height with the one on the hook. And now we need to insert the hook into this hole in the middle of the circle. Then we hook the working yarn again, take a loop, and again the second loop, this one, we also make the same height with the one we had on the hook. Now hook the working yarn and push it through all the loops on the hook. So this is how our stitch looks like. Now it will be a little hard, but we need to make one more stitch under the same stitch that I showed you before, where we inserted the hook before. So under this stitch. Maybe you don't see it like this, but move the stitch a little with your fingers and you will find that stitch where we inserted the hook before. Now we need to insert the hook under the same stitch because we need to make increases. We need to make 2 stitches into 1 stitch from the previous row. So this is our stitch from the previous row, and we should make the second stitch into it. So again, insert the hook under the stitch, the same one, same V, hook the working yarn and take a loop. Then again insert the hook into this hole in the middle of the circle, take a loop. Now we have 3 loops on the hook. Hook the working yarn and push it through all the loops on the hook. And we've made the first increase of the second row and first 2 stitches of the second row. We will make the same stitches into every stitch from the previous row. So let's make the next one. We insert the hook under the next V, under the next stitch of the first row. It's this one. So we insert the hook under it hook the working yarn and take a loop. Make the loop the same height with the first one, with the one we have on the hook. Now again we insert the hook in the middle of the circle into this hole. Hook the working yarn and take a loop. Make the loop the same height. Now we have 3 loops on the hook. Hook the working yarn and push it through all the loops on the hook. And now, again we need to insert the hook under the same V to make the second stitch, to make an increase. So this is our V. This one. In the next rows it will be easier. Hook the working yarn and take a loop. Now again insert the hook in the middle of the circle. Hook the working yarn and take a loop. Now hook the working yarn and push it through all loops on the hook. We've made the second increase. Second increase, and this was the first one. And we have now 4 stitches in the second row. Continue making the same. Now next V. Insert the hook under the V. Hook the working yarn and take a loop. Now insert the hook in the middle of the circle. Hook the working yarn and take a loop. Now we have 3 loops on the hook. Hook the working yarn and push it through all the loops on the hook. Now again we insert the hook under the same V. Under this V, same one. So again we made the next increase, and now we are moving to the next V. Insert the hook under the V, hook the working yarn and take a loop, then in the middle of the circle. And again under the same V, the second stitch. Here's our V. In the middle of the circle, and finish the stitch. Under the next one, and again next one under the same one, second one, the middle of the circle, and the last 2 stitches, the last increase, we will make into this place where we joined the first row. Remember? It doesn't look the same. It's not a V, but we should insert the hook under this stitch and under this one. This is our joining, the joining of the first row. And then you make the same stitches as we just made. So here and here. Hook the working yarn and take a loop. Now all the same steps. In the middle of the circle. So this is the first stitch and the second one into the same place, into the same stitches, because we make an increase. And in the middle. When we have finished the second row, now we need to join it. We do that the same way as we did in the first row. So first we make a loop on the hook a little bigger. Then we insert the hook under the first V of this row, under the first stitch of the row from the back side. Hook the loop and bring it to the back side. And now make chain 1. Hook the working yarn and push it through the loop. So we joined the second row. In the first row, if you remember, we made 6 stitches. In the second row, we made an increase into every stitch from the previous row, from the first row. So we made 2 stitches into each stitch from the first row. That means that in the second row, you should have 12 stitches. We can check if you've done everything right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The 12th one is our joining. We count it as a stitch 2. So everything is right. In the third row, according to the rules of crocheting the perfect circle, we will make increases into every second stitch of the second row. So how we will make stitches, it will be a little different in the third row and in all next rows. First, we insert the hook again under the same V where we just joined the second row. So this is the V through which one we brought our loop to join the second row. So we again insert the hook under the same V, hook the working yarn and take a loop. Don't forget to make all loops the same height. And now to understand where we should insert the hook, we need first to look carefully at our stitch. One stitch, for example this one, contains 2 V. One V is a short V, it's this one. Do you see it? This. And a long V. Let's call it like this, so you can understand what I mean. So look, this a long V. When we inserted the hook in the middle of the circle, we made such long V. So this is a long one and this is a short one. Let's look at another stitch, the same. So this is our stitch and it has a short V and a long V. So now the second place where we will insert the hook is that place where we've made a short V here. So this is the short V of our previous stitch, and we will insert the hook here. And making every next stitches, we will always insert the hook into the same place where we made short V here, for example. Next stitch, this is the short V, so we will insert the hook here. So let's try. So this is, again, I will show it again. This is the short V, and now we will insert the hook at the same place where we made this short V. Then hook the working yarn and take a loop. Now we have 3 loops on the hook. Hook the working yarn and push it through all the loops on the hook. And you see that we made the same stitch as we made in the first row. And like I said before, in this row, in the third one, we will make increases into every second stitch from the second row. So let's start from the first increase. Let's make the first increase right into the first stitch. So now we make the second stitch the same way and under the same V. And this will be our first increase of the third row. So this is V where we just inserted the hook. So again we insert under the same V, hook the working yarn and take a loop. Now again we insert the hook into the same place where we inserted it before. Yeah, where we have this first stitch of the third row. Again here, hook the working yarn and take a loop. Hook the working yarn and push it through all the loops on the hook. So we made the first increase of the third row. As you can see, both stitches we made into the same place here. Under the next V, we make only one stitch. So first insert the hook under the next V. So we will not make here an increase, just one stitch. Hook the working yarn and take a loop. And now again find the short V of the stitch of the previous row. So look, this is the stitch of the second row. It has short V and long V. This is short V. And we made it here. So now we will insert the hook also here. hook the working yarn and take a loop, hook the working yarn and push it through all the loops on the hook. So now we have 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3 in the third row. Here's the first increase, and here's just 1 stitch, and into the next V we will make next increase. So we will make increase, then 1 stitch, increase, 1 stitch, increase, 1 stitch, and all the way around the circle like this. So again, insert the hook under the next V. Under this V we will make now 2 stitches. Hook the working yarn and take a loop. Now again we should find where we made this short V. Here you can see it better, I think. So this is the short V and this is the long one. It's 1 stitch that contains short V and the long V. Here you see, this is the long V and this is the short one. And now we will insert the hook here into the same place where we made this short V. Hook the working yarn and take a loop. Hook the working yarn and push it through all the loops on the hook. You can see the difference between increase and just 1 stitch, because in increase it's 2 stitches made into the same place. It will be useful for you in the future to recognize where you made an increase and where you made just 1 stitch. So now we are making the second increase, and that means that next stitch we will make into the same V where we made this stitch. So we insert the hook under the same V, hook the working yarn and take a loop, and now again we insert the hook into the same place where we just made a stitch. So an increase, a stitch, an increase. Next one will be just 1 stitch. Now again the short V is here. So we insert the hook into the same place. Here. One stitch. An increase, 1 stitch, an increase, 1 stitch. Next one will be the next increase, so 2 stitches under the same V, under the next V. First stitch, here's our short V, and the next stitch under the same V to get the increase, into the same place. So next increase is ready. Into the next stitch we make just one stitch. Then very short V. One stitch. Under the next V we make next increase, so we make 2 stitches under the same V. Here's our short V, this one. First stitch, and then the next one under the same V. Yes, we are making an increase now. So look again. Here's 2 stitches into one. So this is the first increase, then 1 stitch. Then next increase, 1 stitch. Then again next increase, 2 stitches made into the same place. Then 1 stitch. And again an increase. So we make 1 stitch between increases. Into the next V we make 1 stitch. Here's our short V, this one. Into the next V we make next increase, so we make 2 stitches into one. First stitch of the increase, and the second stitch of the increase we make into the same stitch, into the same place. So we made 1 more increase, and into the next V we make 1 stitch. And then again an increase into the next V, 2 stitches into one. One stitch, and the second one into the same V. And like I said before, this place, this joining of the previous row, we count as a normal stitch. So we make here 1 stitch as always, insert the hook under this one and this one. It's a joining. And then make a stitch as we always make it. And then here where we have a short V, And we have finished the third row. Now we join it the same way as we did it before. So we make a loop on the hook a little bigger, then we insert the hook under the first V of the row on the back side, this one. Make sure that you found the right first stitch of the row, not this one. This is a part of the first stitch. This is the first V of this row. Then hook the loop and bring it to the back side and make chain 1 of the working yarn and push it through the loop on the hook. So we have finished the third row and join it. In the second row we have 12 stitches. If you remember, in the third row we increased every second stitch of the second row, and we've got 18 stitches in the third row. In every next row we will get 6 more stitches compared to the previous one. So in the second one we have 12 stitches plus 6, 18 stitches in the third row. This is also the way how you can check yourself if you've made everything right. In the next row we will make increases into every third stitch from the previous row, from the third row. That means that we will have not one stitch, one normal stitch between increases. We will make 2 stitches between increases. So first we will, if in the third row we had increase a stitch, increase a stitch, in the next row we will have increase a stitch, increase, then again 1 stitch, increase. So between increases we will make 2 stitches. And one more important rule about crocheting a perfect circle, no matter what the pattern you use, is that we don't make an increase above an increase. It is very important. For example, here you see our first increase, right? It's 2 stitches made into one place. So in the next row we will not make an increase above this stitch or above this stitch. We make an increase only above 1 stitch, like here for example. This stitch is a lonely stitch, it's not an increase, it's just 1 stitch, so we can make an increase above this stitch. Then we have again an increase, 2 stitches made into one, and we can't make another increase above them, above this stitch or above this one. Next one we have only 1 stitch, so we can make here an increase in the next row. So as you can see, here we have the increase in the third row, and that means that into this V and into this V we will make only 1 stitches, 1 here and 1 here. We can't make here increases. And we start the next row the same way as we did before. We insert the hook under the same V where we joined the previous row. Hook the working yarn, take a loop, and now we crochet the pattern the same way as we did it in the previous row. So we find the short V of the stitch from the previous row, it's this one. We made it here, so now we will insert the hook into the same place. This is the long part, long V. See, This is the long V, and this is the short one. First part, second part. Short V, and we made it here. So we insert the hook into the same place where we made this short V. So we made the first stitch, and again I remind you that we don't make here increase, because here we have an increase in the previous row, and the next stitch the same, we make only one stitch under the next V. Here's the short V, so we made 2 stitches, and like I said before, in this row we will make increases into every 3rd stitch. So we made 2, next one is the 3rd one, and we make here the first increase in this row, and this V is a part of this 1 stitch of the 3rd row. So we can make here an increase, because this is not an increase, it's just 1 stitch. So we make here an increase, the first stitch, the increase, and the second stitch under the same V, the same one, into the same place. So here you see in this row we made 4 stitches, 1 stitch, 1, and increase, 2 stitches into 1, into the same place. Now again we repeat the same. First we make 1, 1, and then an increase. So on the next stitch we make 1, on the next one again 1 stitch, one, 1, and now we make next increase. Into the next V. One stitch of the increase and the second stitch under the same V. To the same place. And again you see we made 1, 1, and an increase, 2 stitches into the same place, into 1, 1, 1, increase, 1, 1, increase. And we crochet this row all the way around the same way, 1, 1, increase. and the last increase we make under the stitches of our joining from the previous row, because we count it as a stitch, just as a normal V. So we make here 2 stitches into 1, we make an increase. The same way, first stitch and the second one into the same place. We have finished this row with the increase, and then you have your first stitches and it's just 1 stitch 1. If you have the same, that means you've done everything right. Increase, 1 stitch 1 stitch, increase, 1 stitch 1 stitch, increase, 1 stitch 1 stitch, and all the way around like this. That means everything is right. You can also count your stitches after we join the row. Let's join it now the same way. So the loop on the hook will make it bigger. Then we insert the hook under the first V of this row. It's this one. Make sure that you've chosen the right one. You see, it's between first 2 stitches, right between them. Not this one. This one is right. Then hook the loop and bring it to the back side and make chain 1. So now you can count your stitches, because the joining we count as 1 more stitch, and in this row you should have 24 stitches, because like I said before, in every next stitch we get 6 more stitches compared to the previous one. You remember that in the second one we had 12 stitches, in the third one 18 stitches, and in the fourth row we have 24 stitches, 18 plus 6. If you also got this hole in the middle of the circle, let's fix it now. So first, pull this tip of the yarn to tighten the hole as much as you can. So it's almost gone. And now let's hide this tip. I will use a needle with a big eye for that. And we push the tip under the stitches around the hole. This will help us to hide the tip of the yarn and to tighten the hole stronger. So just push the needle with the yarn under the stitches around the hole. Now just cut the rest of the yarn. Let's start crocheting the next row. So in this row we made 2 stitches between increases. In the next row we will make 3 stitches between increases. So we make 1 1 1 increase, 1 1 1 increase. And again, I remind you the rule about not making an increase above an increase. So let's see what we have in the previous row. Here we will make the first stitch as always. So here we have one stitch, one, and then an increase. You see, we made these two stitches into the same place. So this is an increase. And here it's just one and one. So that means that in the next row we can't make an increase here or here above these stitches, because this is an increase and we can't make an increase above an increase. So in the next row we will make an increase into the first stitch, and then we will make 3 stitches. Now you will see why we make it like this. So we make the first stitch the same way as we did before. First we insert the hook under the same V where we joined the previous row. Hook the working yarn, take a loop. Now, as always, we insert the hook into the same place where we have this short V. So we made the first stitch of the increase. Now we make the second one, the second stitch under the same V to get an increase here, and into the same place. So we started this row from making an increase, and we've made this increase above 1 stitch. There is no increase in the previous row, just 1 stitch. And like I said before, in this row we will make 3 stitches between increases. So we've made first increase, and now we make just 3 stitches into next 3 V from the previous row. So the first one into the next V, then 1 stitch into the next V, and 1 stitch into the next V. Now it will be more clear why we've made it like this. So look, we've made 1 increase, 2 stitches into 1, and then 1, 1, 1, and last 2 stitches are made above an increase of the previous row. You see, this was an increase of the previous row, 2 stitches made into 1. And since we can't make increases here or here, we've got just 1 stitch and 1 stitch above the increase. Again, increase 1, 1, 1. Into the next V, we make the next increase. First stitch of the increase, and the second one under the same V. So between 2 increases we have 3 stitches, and this increase we've also made above one stitch, just one stitch, not above another increase, above one stitch. Now again we make 3 stitches, 1, 1, 1, into the next 3 stitches, 3V. So the increase 1, 1, 1, and again we make an increase into the next stitch. And as you can see, this is also an increase from the previous row, and we've made just 1 and 1 stitches above it without increases, just 1, 1. That's why we started this row from the increase, so we could follow all the rules of making a perfect circle. So into the next V we make next increase. First stitch of the increase and the second one into the same places. And again 3 stitches into next 3V. Increase 1, 1, 1, and again an increase into the next stitch. And into this joining, the 3rd stitch. Increase 1, 1, 1, and increase. First stitches were our first increase. Join in the same way. And we have finished the 5th row. If you remember, in the previous row we had 24 stitches. In this row, plus 6, 30 stitches, so you can check yourself if you want. In this row, we made 3 stitches between increases. In the next row, we will make 4 stitches between increases. In every next row, we add 1 more stitch between increases. Let's start the next row. As you can see, we have here an increase of the previous row, so that means that we can't make our first increase into this or into these stitches. Here and here we can only make 1 stitch, because according to the rule we can't make an increase above an increase. So let's start from 1 stitch that we make the same way as in previous rows, into the same V where we joined the previous row. So 1 stitch here and 1 stitch into the next V. And then you see that the next stitch of the previous row is just one stitch. It's not an increase, just one stitch. That means that we can make the first increase of this row here into this V. So next we make the first increase, 2 stitches into one. First one and the second one into the same V. So we made first increase, and like I said before, in this row we will make 4 stitches between increases. So into the next 4 V we will make 4 stitches, 1 stitch into every V. So here's our increase, and increase, and then 1, 1, 1, 1, 4 stitches, and into the next stitch we make next increase. Two stitches into one. Second one into the same V. So look, like I said, we will make 4 stitches between increases. This an increase and this an increase. 4 stitches. So now again 4 stitches. Increase 1, 2, 3, 4, and next increase. And again 4 stitches. And now next increase. So continue crocheting this row till the end, and we will meet in the end to check if you made everything right. I'm making my last 2 stitches. Last stitch as always into this joining. So in the end of the row I have an increase and then 1, 2. And because we started the row from 2 stitches, now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, an increase. An increase, 1, 2, 3, 4, an increase. 4 stitches between increases. That means that I've made everything right. Now let's join this row the same way as we did before. And now you can count your stitches in this row if you want. you should have 36 stitches, because in the previous row we had 30, and in every next row we get 6 more stitches. 30 plus 6, 36. Now let's crochet the last row, the 7th one, and in the last row, in the 7th row, we will make 5 stitches between increases, and all the rules are the same. So I will start from making just 1 stitch into 1, the same way as we started all previous rows. And after I make the first increase, I will explain you why I've started this row like this. So 1 into the next one, 1, then again 1, and into the next one, 1, and into the next one I will make first increase. And now why I've started this row like this. So let's find the first increase of the previous row. It's this one. As you remember, we can't make an increase here or here. We can't make an increase above an increase. So 100% I would make 1 stitch here and 1 stitch here. But you would ask me why I didn't choose this stitch or this one to make here an increase or here an increase. There isn't increases in the previous row, but I just prefer to make an increase right after an increase from the previous row. So here's an increase from the previous row. Above them, above these stitches, I've made 1 stitch, 1 stitch, and then right after this increase I've made first increase here in my new row. It's just how I prefer to do that. The same here. This increase right after the increase from the previous row. The same. See? So now I have here 4 stitches and then first increase. But in this row we will have 5 stitches between increases. So when we finish this row, when we come to the end of the row, here we will make 1 more stitch and we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll have 5 as we need it. But it's not the rule that you must make an increase right after an increase from the previous row. The main thing is not to make an increase above an increase. So theoretically you could make an increase here, for example, or here in the first stitch. But I advise you to make it the same way as I make it, because it even helps you not to count the stitches when you are more experienced already. You know that after an increase from the previous row you make next increase. So let's continue. After increases we make 5 stitches. And into the next one I will make next increase. And look, even if I didn't count these 5 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I know that after the increase of the previous row, I will make an increase in this row. Even without counting, I know about that. So, into the next stitch, I make next increase. But if you're a beginner, anyway, I advise you to count the stitches. So what we have now, first increase, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, next increase. Now again 5 stitches, increase, 5 stitches, and increase. So continue this row by yourself till the end, and in the end we will check if you've made everything right. So I've just made my last increase, this one, and 1 stitch left that we as always make into this joining. It will be just 1 stitch, not an increase. And like I said in the beginning, after making the last stitch, we've got here 5 stitches between increases, if you made everything right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 first stitches that we made in the beginning of the row, and 1 stitch in the end of the row. 5 stitches, and here our increases. First one and the last one. So that means that I've made everything right. Since it's our last row, we will join it the same way as we did it before. Now we need to measure 5 lengths of our circle. We do it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then cut the rest of the yarn. First we will join this row here, and then we will crochet the border around the circle. Using this yarn, it will be enough for us. Now pull out all the yarn and first we will join this row here, and then we will crochet a border around the circle. So to join this row, I will use a needle with a big eye, but you can also use your hook. We insert the needle or the hook under the first stitch of this row. Again, make sure you've chosen the right one. It's this one. This is the first stitch, the first V of the row. This is not. This is a part of the last stitch. So this is the first V between the first stitch and the second one. And now we need to bring the needle back into the same stitch where the yarn comes from. So this is our yarn, it comes from this V. So now we bring it back to the same V, and we also insert the needle under these bumps on the back side of the circle. this. So we've just made the last stitch of the last row of the circle. And now we will crochet the border around the circle. For that, insert the hook under the stitch where we have our working yarn, under this V. Hook the working yarn, take a loop, and now we will make slip stitches under every V around the circle. So to make the first slip stitch, we insert the hook under the next V, hook the working yarn, take a loop, then push this loop through this one, like this. Now again into the next one. Under the next one. So making these slip stitches, we are getting a border around the circle. Continue making it all the way around the circle. So we came to the beginning of our border. This was our first stitch. Now we need to join the border here. For that, pull out the tip of the yarn. And now again I will use a needle with a big eye. So first we insert the needle under this first stitch of the border. And we bring the needle back into the same stitch where the tip comes from. So this is our tip, it comes from this stitch, and we bring it back into the same stitch. We've made the last stitch of the border. Our circle is ready. Now I advise you to do the wet heat treatment for the circle, and then in the second part of the tutorial we will crochet the side walls of the back and sew two parts of the back together.